Wonderful. Well, hello everyone. Um, it's good to be here with everyone. I know we're going to be recording this, so this is exciting. So I know everyone is there's a lot going on right now in a very good way. I'm very delighted to be here to help represent ACT-IAC. Honored to be working with a great team. Martha Doris, Courtney K. Decker, Crystal Philcox, Amanda Chavez, Dominic Sale, Airskill, Andrea Jones, and so many others behind the scenes as well. And Nancy, of course, you for all your support. This is an exciting time for our COI as we have been um, thinking a lot about what the next phase will be and how do we help government think through as we're looking to rebuild and looking to transform and modernize. The importance of doing that with CX in mind, or else, as we know, what's going to happen is a lot of money will be spent on modernization and transformation and it won't work. And with AI coming in, I'm just delighted to be joined with Dan Barrett to talk about how AI and CX works together. Of note, this was a topic that was very hot at the National Postal Forum, and so with that, I'd love to turn it over to Dan to introduce himself, because he was a former CXO of the U.S. Postal Service as well. And so I'm just grateful to be doing this with you, Dan. And I'll share the
Yeah.
slides.
Okay, absolutely, Lee, and thank you for the kind introduction here. As Lee noted, I am a director in the CX domain for a while, and with Guidehouse right now. Prior to joining the consulting ranks, I was an executive inside government, and still have a lot of close ties to many of my former federal colleagues. And I'm just excited to be with you all today to talk about this incredible connection between AI and what it can enable for citizens, how to really improve our service levels to citizens at dimensions that previously would have been impossible. So such an exciting time, excited to be here. And Lee, back to you.
Thank you so much, Dan. So yeah, let's get started, Dan. I'm excited for we to go forward and we could go into further
Yeah,
intro.
I think we have an icebreaker here first. So let's start with this. We're going to go a little off script and try to keep it a little fun here. But for our art appreciators in our audience today, those who have an eye for art, does anything about this painting look familiar? And as you look at it and evaluate this piece of art, I'll give a little bit of background. It was unveiled back in 2016, so almost 10 years ago, to great excitement in a trendy neighborhood in Amsterdam. And it has all the hallmarks of a Rembrandt. I'll just share that. His masterful use of light and shadow, the deeply human portrait he's known for is right in front of us, and then right down to his unconventional, deliberately textured brushstrokes, which were a unique approach that he used. But when it was released, no one was familiar with this painting. It was recognizable as a Rembrandt, but no one had seen it before. And certainly, Rembrandt lived in the 17th century and was not producing any new work in 2016. So people were, the buzz around this painting was, was it a new find? Was it truly a Rembrandt? Um, and I think, you know, here's the facts. If you go to the next slide, Lee, um, it was created in 2016 by an ad agency, J. Walter Thompson, and Microsoft on behalf of ING Group, ING being a financial institution based in the Netherlands, Rembrandt being a Dutch artist, Dutch master. And it was created entirely using AI. The painting was built based on 168,000 scans of Rembrandt's 300 known paintings. A team of data scientists, engineers, and experts applied learning algorithms to select typical characteristics of the artist's work. So basically, the prompts and inputs from humans were a 17th century Caucasian male, 40 years old, wearing a hat and dressed in period attire with a white collar. And then this image was created by AI with a 3D printer, applying 13 layers of ink on a canvas, imitating Rembrandt's style and brushstrokes. And so let me just ask you to consider your reaction to this. I mean, in the market at the time, uh, the reactions ranged from spectacular and stunning to, on the negative side, tasteless, insensitive, and soulless, I think was one quote. So, think of your own reaction to this, but I kind of wanted to make the point, first off, that this was possible in 2016. And so look at what Gen AI could do in 2016, and it's come light years in the almost 10 years since. So I think the message we need to take from this is that whether we like it or not, digital networks and AI are really just transforming business and society. And rather than oppose this all encompassing trend, we're better off understanding it, owning it, and most of all, shaping it. So I think that's what Lee and I hope to do today is just begin this active dialogue around AI and find the goodness and ways of integrating it for the good of the customers we're here to serve. So Lee, next slide.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, so much. I think that was beautifully stated, and as we know, with any technology that's being implemented as well, it has to be done the right way, which is one of the reasons why we're so excited to be talking about how the fusion of how CX, if you got to implement that right, to implement AI right, and to help with the transformation, you have to do it from a CX lens to be able to make it work. And so we'll talk. So I'm Lee. It's great to be here with you, Dan. Dan.
But yeah, and Barrett, I gave a quick intro earlier, but again, great to be here. My expertise is in the CX domain, and I think like all of us, have taken a very active interest in AI and excited about the possibilities and to talk through some of those with all of you here.
Love it. Well, I mean, the session today, we're going to go through really talking about service delivery excellence. We'll talk about how CX, right, drives efficient, effective service delivery. We're already talking about the AI is why, how AI is important for customers. We'll go into some use cases. We're going to go dive deep into it, which hopefully that's again, those are not going to be, of course, there's a lot of great examples. We picked out a few that were public because we wanted to highlight some government elements, but we know there's a lot of things going behind the scenes as well. We're going to talk about some challenges as well, things that we need to be aware of. And the goal is to make some time for a Q&A as well so that we could have that conversation. But we know this is just one of many combos to come. So just to dive right in, I mean, when we think about, try to revisit what service delivery excellence is and when we think about CX, right? And how do we get to efficient, effective service delivery? It really comes down from the standpoint of what the bottom line at the end of the day is, you have the public, right? Customers, if you're depending what, as you look at it, veterans, families, farmers, students, etc. It's really how are they experiencing the services that we're providing. We have to understand that. If we don't understand that, we're not going to be able to um, provide the right services and actually make it efficient and effective. And what's going to happen is there's going to be inefficiency, there's going to be increased cost, right, to do that. Now, it's one thing to say that, but I think we need to be thinking about it from an omni perspective, and we need to be thinking about it, which we mean by it doesn't matter how the public is interacting with government, whether it's website, mobile, contact center, etc. They're going to interact in many different ways, and we have to have a way to be able to understand that across. So that's really critical. And then if you go into really further diving deep into what this means and where the opportunity is and where we see the fusion of AI and CX together and how do you do this is the as you think about there's a promise that as you look from the government perspective of what the government every agency what they what their missions are and to the public and what do they have to deliver and there is that promise that's in place that they have to do whether it's veterans as we know they served on the dotted line we need to now provide make sure that they get the care benefits and services they need if you're providing student loans, healthcare, it doesn't matter, whatever that case may be, there is that service promise. And then there's that experience that we're actually the public is experiencing, and we could all, of course, reflect on that, how we, interact on in our private lives with the public, with the government when we need it. There is that those two elements is where there could be there is a service delivery gap. Now, the idea is we want to close that gap. And this is where what we're saying is AI can help us do that, but we have to do it from an understanding of what the service needs to be and what is service is being experienced so that we could continuously to close that and which will result in more efficiency, more effectiveness, reduced burden, more convenience, and really get to what the requirement is. And this is actually very aligned to when we look at the recent AI action plan that was just released by the White House, the America's AI plan, and that is in there. It talks about how there's a imperative for agencies to be utilizing AI to find ways and how do you reduce the gap and how do you improve service delivery. So that is very, very exciting on that. Dan, any other thoughts from your standpoint before we dive
No,
into
I
it?
think absolutely right. And just the possibilities are exciting for how we can do that. But your point remains, we have to be deliberate about where we can have the most impact and make choices about which journeys to apply it to, which processes. And I think as we'll get to later in the presentation, Lee, there are some very real factors to consider, like privacy, governance, organizational dynamics that have to be approached thoughtfully, right, as we proceed. But again, putting the citizen at the center and then really mobilizing around what they care about most and choosing those journeys with the highest impact, I think is paramount to me.
Yeah, that's great. And then, right, and we also, as we look, we've talked a lot about this. There's an aspect of the external, but there's also the internal piece too. And how do we make sure from an employee side that they have the tools and services they need, the systems to be able to actually, deliver on that promise as well. So, and I know we have that as some thoughts later on too.
Yeah, I'll grab this one, Lee. I think that the point here is that uh, our government agency colleagues are being asked to do more with less. And there's an increased volume of citizen interactions, increasing complexity um, in those interactions, and what's entailed to resolve customer issues is increasingly complex. Um, and citizen expectations are also growing at the same time based on their interactions with brands in the private sector, right? And so they make no distinction between a private sector entity and a government agency. When they've seen what's possible in the commercial space, they expect their expectations rise to that level with their government interactions too, right? And I think that's what we're up against. And collectively, this is almost an AI imperative, right? That to meet expectations and keep pace, we have to acknowledge the possibilities that AI can bring forward that just would not be possible in a manual setting, right? So a few key data points. I won't read all these, but a couple of key 20% increase is expected in contact center volume over the next 2 years. 72% of customers expect immediate engagement, like on a 24/7 basis when contacting a company. Um, I'm just trying to pick out a few of these. Just AI enables government to handle millions of interactions without proportional staffing increases to that level of volume. And chatbots, recommendation engines, and automation ensure citizens aren't restricted to 9 to 5 access. So I think collectively, these factors sort of translate into this imperative for us to be thoughtful and deliberate about how to employ AI and integrate it into the solutions that we offer customers. So as we respond to this imperative, just to back up for a second, we all kind of know what AI is, right? But we felt it was important to just put forward a common definition and have it be documented as when we say AI, what exactly do we mean? So this was a definition that Lee and I kind of liked. Artificial intelligence, AI, is a set of technologies that enable machines to mimic human intelligence, including perceiving, reasoning, learning, and interacting with the environment. And this was a definition that was crafted in the World Economic Forum. So I want to credit them with this, but that's how we've thought of how we're defining AI, and just felt it was important to put that forward.
Yeah, Dan, what I love about this and I know again there's many out there, and I'm sure there many will come of definitions, but what I love about this is also it talks about some of the perhaps the cautions that we have with it and the concerns of, and this is again the AI action plan talks about the need for reskilling. It talks about that there's almost the piece around a lot of talk about education. How do we make sure that we're creating pathways for it? But it also talks, the security aspect, the governance aspect. We could see as you look at this definition, it anyone, I'm sure you'll read as you're reading this, I'm sure a lot of these, questions may come up around it, and we have to deal with it at the same time, not to paralyze us, but for us to move forward. And that's the exciting piece here. And we see the work around CX as a critical way for us to be able to do that, because again, you can't just apply AI for AI's sake. It has to be done intentionally around it, which is where we see, when you think about, okay, at the core, what business problems can we solve with it, right? At the core of it. And I'm sure many of you there's many ideas, but when we thought about this, we thought about it in these four kind of broad categories that is very actionable. As you saw from Dan's initial that slide, it talked about the imperative, where the reality is calls will increase. The reality is interactions will increase. The burden on government of being able to the need to serve the public is not going to decrease. That's going to happen. So we have to be thinking new ways of being able to do this. The interesting thing is, I know Dan and I also had the opportunity to work with other commercial entities and very, very, large enterprises. And what's fascinating is they're also looking to do this as well. They're looking to do this to be able to do more with less, to be able to do this to reduce expenses, right? Increase their margin to do that. So but from a government standpoint, when you do this, it will increase your mission capabilities. It'll increase and also reduce unnecessary cost of rework, et cetera, to be able to do this, but really to do more of the mission that's needed. So whether it's automating support, insights from data, being able to really harness. I mean, we always talk about in government, it's not really a data problem. It's really a matter of it's an insights problem, and it's really a matter of an action problem. And being able to do that, AI can help with that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's around escalating action. And that's that's the imperative that this administration has really leaned in on around the action aspect, around how can agencies really be able to zero in on this. And this is something we're seeing in, you named the agency. That's going to be the focus. That has already been the focus, and you will see more of that in their transformation efforts. How to drive to that? How do you close that gap?
So Lee, on that note, we started to just, as Lee talked about kind of what we wanted to do that would be actually useful to those present here, talking about how to sort of bucket these AI use cases so that we can take those back and sort of know where to look for opportunities and how to sort of harness AI in a practical way. And across our clients and across industry, um, we came up with sort of these five focus areas, if you will, and sort of use cases for how AI can be harnessed to improve service delivery. Um, Number one, sentiment analysis and insights. This whole area so critical. Um, Getting that outside in customer feedback, putting the customer at the center of the business, and actually hearing their voice telling you on how to serve them best. And harnessing the power of these insights much more efficiently with less manual effort and really sort of drawing out what's most important. So that's category one. Number two, conversational AI and virtual assistants. This area is not new. I can remember back to the early 2010s when there was a lot of activity around this, but these have just had a breakthrough with the launch of some of the more recent Gen AI capabilities, and they are just amazing. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Thirdly, predictive and proactive service delivery, using data and triggers to sort of predict what customer needs may exist before the customer even knows they have those needs themselves, and thus, moving in advance of a complaint or issue, or to proactively reach out to the customer and really, based on your understanding of what they're going to need. AI offers new capabilities and just opportunities to do that in a way that's never been possible. Number four, intelligent process automation. So this one's kind of just how to speed service delivery, how to make service delivery seamless, most efficient, and really just give time back to that customer with this intelligent process automation. And then lastly, personalization, right? How can we predict those customer needs, and instead of making them search through siloed portals and different government entities, how can we sort of come to them with what we know their need is going to be? So we'll talk a little bit about that. So Lee, let me turn it back to you. I think you're going to go into the sentiment analysis piece here.
Absolutely, Dan. Thank you so much for laying the groundwork on it. And then, by the way, as we're going through this, please feel free to put in chat your any questions, and we'll also have some opportunity for live Q&A as well. Um, the when we think about the first one is, and we have the Department of Labor. I'm going to go through a couple of examples on it, but really the bottom line is, and as I mentioned, that there isn't necessarily a data problem. It's a matter of a insights and really an action problem, like from the standpoint of being able to truly understand what is the fundamental need, and frankly, not only that, but also aligning it to prioritization, and frankly, what is most important. If when I was in government, the what I there was so much data all around me, and the thing that I was looking for, and I'm sure I know Dan, we've talked about this as well, you as well in postal and in others areas, is that it's like, okay, what's most important? What do I need to focus right now? And having the ability to quickly go through millions, billions of data points and be able to identify what's most important is such it's we're able to do this. And what's great is it's being done already. I mean, a couple examples. We have the Department of Labor example. I'll give you another example. Like Social Security is, they were able to identify. They had a bunch of complaints coming in where applicants were saying that they were filing their claim, and then they left, and then they came back, and they lost their place of the claim. And so what happened was they started calling the call center. Well, SA, they were able to identify the trend through sentiment analysis of where those complaints were of that issue, of that recommendation. And what they did was they just added a button on their website that shows, hey, if you need to complete your claim, just press here. And it's actually on SSA.gov. You could see it. And it's a great, and what do you know? Calls went down. Um, I know VA, they've used this as an example of where finding pain points in show rates. So for instance, veterans, they found that there was as you know, there's no shows is not good for any organization. When you have no shows, that is a massive cost driver. And so what they did was they found that there was some gaps in where veterans were sharing of why they were no showing to certain appointments. The VA made those changes. They increased the show rates, and that equated to $1 billion in cost avoidance. The data was all there, but they didn't have, but by using this technology, they were able to really get to what the focus is. And it goes on and on there too. Dan, do you have any other thoughts? I know there's a lot of examples here, but just point around how do you as an agency really implement this technology so that they have the ability, this AI use case, so they have the ability to really get to what's most important, and how do you actually improve efficiency and effectiveness at scale?
Yeah, I mean, I think the use of unstructured data and harnessing data that you already have, it's disrupting the insights field quite candidly. I mean, what's happening right now with surveys having lower response rates year over year, and just the shortened number of questions in surveys. We're down to 4 or 5 question surveys at most in most cases, right? This idea of taking unstructured data, the spoken word, right, and harnessing it to derive insights, is powerful. It doesn't require huge investments in technology. You can take call logs, you can take survey open ends, you can take social media feedback, and you can quickly derive the prevalence of key issues. You can determine the emotion and tone. You can just determine what's positive and negative. And it really gives you direct insights on where to place improvement priorities, right? And it can do that quickly now using AI, right? If you think about, Lee, what Medallia talks about, that inner loop and that outer loop of feedback, that inner loop being the immediate response to an individual incident or occurrence, right, that comes through in feedback or on a call, and that outer loop being that more systemic, frequent issue that's coming up in the data, right? It can help sort of capture, summarize, encapsulate both of those things and enable quick response when, let's say a traveler is in transit in an airport, or with a colleague yesterday from Amtrak, right, on a train. You can intervene, right? You can take intervention because it's fast enough. No longer do you have to wait for this manual creation of a report, right, before you can have the insights and knowledge you need, right? You can have that in real time, right? So that's the addition I would make here, Lee.
That's great, Dan. Thank you. We'll go to the next one.
Yeah, let me jump in here on the chatbots and virtual assistants. Look, these are not new, folks, right? They've been around a while. I can remember, for those of you who don't know me, I spent 20 years at the United States Postal Service, and I can remember during my time inside government how we were working on these, using Alexa and Siri to provide package tracking updates, for example. These at the time, I'm going back to 2010, 2011, 2012, they could handle simple tasks like, for example, setting a timer or telling you what the weather is. But back then they were, let's be fair, they were limited. In the early days, they could really only answer a narrow set of kind of predefined questions with no really contextual understanding. Each interaction was sort of treated in isolation, and they used canned responses. So simply put, it just was really limited and not not really a great experience, right? I'm not trying to be disparaging, but it just wasn't amazing initially. But in the last 2 years, oh my God, there have been just incredible breakthroughs using large language models. We hear LLMs all the time, right? These have just radically improved comprehension, tone, accuracy, fluency. So think GPT-4, Claude, Gemini, and others. We're having these human-like conversations across really sophisticated and complex topics, and we're having them in multiple languages. And so I did want to just, as a quick aside, without getting too technical, we hear the term LLM all the time, right? And I think this just means the model is trained on massive amounts of text data, like billions or trillions of words from books, articles, digital content, and that allows it to understand and generate and interact using human language. But the difference now is what's called transformer-based LLMs. This is really the engine behind the breakthrough we're now seeing in modern conversational AI. So instead of looking at each individual word one at a time, they look at all words in a sentence simultaneously, and they can also maintain context across long sequences. Like, I don't know if any of you have interacted with, let's say, chat or Claude or in the conversation, you can go back to a prompt you made like 8 prompts ago, and it will seamlessly go back to it, right? So just incredible new possibilities. Um, Public sector agencies are often running at this, y'all. Like, what Lee and I also want to get out of this is like government and our colleagues are not sitting still, right? They're moving on these opportunities, and they're piloting or deploying Gen AI to support citizens at scale already. And the bottom line is virtual assistants are really increasingly credible front doors for citizen services. They reduce call volume, they handle 24/7 demand, and they increase accessibility. And they can just really deliver incredibly effective experiences, right? So, want to call out the IRS, which uh, launched a couple of web-based chatbots and phone-based voice bots. And as of late 2023, they had supported over 13 million interactions and resolved 42% of them. And I am confident in saying that the team at IRS is continually enhancing this. We don't have updated data that's actually out there publicly, um, but want to, just give the accolades to our government colleagues who are already off and running on behalf of their customers. Lee,
Yeah,
any further thoughts on this one?
beautifully stated, Dan. It is interesting to think, and I know IRS, as many of us know, they're looking to really modernize their take things to the next level for their contact center as well, which is very exciting. I think exciting for the public, for across, as many other agencies are doing. This is an incredible opportunity we're seeing is around, and again, contact center, as Dan was saying, this is not new. This has been around for a very long time. And I see Martha, Martha has been leading this for, and many others that have been leading it at GSA and trying to push the government to this place. And it's just great to see that we're at a time where that we could actually that there's a lot of horsepower behind us to make this a reality. But Dan, your point about that there's bright spots in agencies and how do we lean in on those successes and build upon that because that's how it's like that's how we can really drive great things happen and things that are not working. Let's stop that. But this is thanks for so much for highlighting it and to go to the next. We'll go to the next one. I think this is exciting. this element of how can we be more predictive? How do we provide more proactive service delivery? A lot of this also starts with being more responsive, and I know that's a big focus of which I love seeing that that's a big focus as part of the plan. And how do we have a more responsive government? Because that's what the public is looking to do. But another example here is where CMS has been able to, just by applying, understanding the data, being able to then reduce the number of disenrollments that were dropped out, and as a result, that means that you have more that are able to get care. And as we know, Medicare and Medicaid is a huge topic, to say the least. It's a big, big topic. Has been it's a lot of news lately. I think this is something we're going to see HHS really and CMS we anticipate them leaning in on this more because they're going to have to figure out how to do this in a way that's more cost effective and find new ways of being able to do it. This is also, Dan, this is a place where, as we're talking about the CMS example, a place where we can really have a lot of impact on people's lives. And, one example I'd like to share is about the VA, where the VA has been able to use this data to save lives. And for an example, here's a situation where a veteran, this is a real example, a veteran goes into Heinz VA in Chicago. Is the veteran is there for an appointment. They're getting their pharmacy medication, and the veteran leaves feedback to say that they want to hurt themselves. As a result, the AI was able to identify that this veteran was in crisis and be able to then make sure that, and again, this is the veterans at the hospital. Veterans still at the hospital, not talking about mental health to anyone specifically about mental health, but decides to interact with a technology to be able to share that feedback. And we're able to get the veteran, save the veteran's life. The VA has been able to save over 30,000 lives just by doing this, by applying AI, a listening capability, right, like this, to be able to proactively address and save lives. This has also been something that has gone into, let's say, veterans that are having financial hardship, automatically get the veteran the access to housing services to address to prevent homelessness. There's so many different ways to apply this if we do this the right way. And another key piece why we are very bullish about this use case as something that can be applied in every single area. So pretty much really anywhere there's a service that's being provided, having that ability to try to understand broadly of how that service is going and why that service is happening, et cetera, will allow to not only get understanding of the specific service, but broadly the needs of that individual that can be cared for above and beyond.
Lee, can I just offer one thought on this? I mean, in terms of mission impact and just life impact on people, it doesn't get much more significant than this, right? And that just so amazing that this capability exists to proactively take this intervention, right? But in addition, going back to the CMS example too, right? Can you imagine if you're in a vulnerable population, right? And you have a need for care, you have a health issue of some kind, and due to just an administrative hardship, right? Your coverage is disrupted, and you have a need for care, and then the financial implications of that as they hit you. Surely your intent would have been to sustain coverage, and I'm just happy to see that CMS has been active in sort of facilitating the ex parte renewals, right? And that now those represent as much as 70% of total renewals to make sure people have continuity of coverage and don't face this situation where they have to choose their finances or their health. and at their time of need, it's there, right? And not due to some administrative paperwork that didn't happen on time, right? They sustain that.
Yeah,
Just an add that hey, the life impacts are real here.
that's great, Dan. If I may also just pull on that thread, I was chatting with the CX leader at CVS Health, and what he shared with me was, and this is a public company, right? They're a commercial company, and as you know, they also have a large care plan. And he was sharing with me is that one way what they've done is they were able to they saw a trend where you know those that needed cataract surgeries, they would get stuck in a paper drill of trying to get that approved. And which kind of doesn't make sense. And you think about the cost, and he was talking about the cost internally in the organization to get that approved. What they realized, and because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is they're going to approve the surgery. You need cataract surgery, they're going to get it approved. And so what they did is they used next time someone came with a cataract surgery, needed a cataract surgery, they automatically approved it, and that saved that cost. That improved this, of course, the experience for the patient, and they got the outcomes that they were looking for. And of course, that increases the relationship that the patient has with the care plan, and as a result, they're better utilization, better adherence to care, and that also is a cost effectiveness aspect in addition to better outcomes. So we're seeing that it's happening on the commercial side, and that very example is a perfect one. I was just surprised to hear a commercial entity taking a use case that would be very much so on the government side. Like if we see examples where if you go through a certain algorithm of steps that it's going to result in this outcome, let's take the steps out. Let's give time back back to the public, back to the customer. I know also just really quick, I know this is something that Janet Pence talks a lot about, and James McCavitt from CVP, they talk about time back to mission. And they talk a lot about it's exciting to see how they're looking at this as well. Like how can they be more predictive, more proactive from a standpoint of time back to their their agents, but also time back to the public, whether you're going through global entry or whatever the case may be as well. Okay, we'll go to the next one, Dan.
Yep, absolutely.
So this is another, I think this is something, Dan, you want to go through?
No, I think you go ahead and I'll chime in, Lee.
So this is again another example where we believe how this technology could be applied for. This is an example with Bureau of Fiscal Service. We're not going to read this out to you, but this is an example of where you have, if you have process steps, how do you make sure that you can automate that if you know that we're going through an algorithm? So we see this as a very, very something. Definitely, if you're running let's say a claims process, benefits delivery, if you're providing, like whether it's a loan, a grant, there's a set of process steps that happen. If we could reduce that, we could automate that is something that we believe is very exciting from the standpoint of not only, of course, better experience for the individual, but also reducing time, reducing cost as critical. And also, this is something that we believe, and I know there's a lot of concern. There is some concern out there. How will this take away jobs? And our what we would say is that again, let the machines what machines do best. Let humans do what humans do best. And this is where we believe CX is going to be so critical because if we start automating a process that does not work, or is a process that provides a bad outcome, what's going to happen is we automate that. It's going to be a faster bad outcome, right? And so it's something that we think that it's so critical that we have to make sure to also reimagine. Reimagine. It's not just a matter of, okay, this is the process we are doing, so let's automate it. Let's take the time to really understand what is the outcome we're trying to achieve, or how do we achieve the best outcome, and then reimagine that. I would also say this is something that we should also be looking across silos, not just vertically, looking horizontally, because oftentimes there's an opportunity to create efficiencies as we're thinking about. Typically, the usual process is in the context of kind of the industrial way of how you do things. We should be looking at these problems horizontally, which is a great reason why I think CX, as we know, CX is such a critical discipline to make sure that we're looking horizontally across so that we can make sure that we are setting the right process, then we're aligning the right technology and people to be able to actually execute the right way.
Lee, let me just add to that. I think on IPA, um, a lot of government programs involve demonstrating eligibility for benefits, right? There's whether it's like a housing authority or unemployment insurance or a lot of government programs involve that, right? So um, demonstrating eligibility involves sometimes a lengthy form, okay, and uh, also the submission of some accompanying documents um, that are usually submitted via an online portal, right? So this one is a combination of sort of RPA and machine learning to sort of, um, you know, across databases, uh, accelerate the process of just acknowledging and verifying eligibility. Um, Machine learning can take the form submission and make sure that all the fields have been filled out and that all of the accompanying documentation was submitted. Instead of a human having to do that, it's complex, right? And it involves checks in prospectively multiple databases, and it would involve time to go through that, right? So there is some complexity, but it is a very mundane, repeatable task, right? And so for a better outcome for the applicant, the claimant, the beneficiary, using technology to accelerate that process of eligibility determination is possible, right? And IPA is a means of doing that. It's also done quite a bit. We mentioned the Bureau of Fiscal Service here. It's done a lot in like loan applications and in the financial industry as well. So just to
Yeah,
make one quick add.
that's great, Dan. I think in the financial industry, we're seeing a lot. This is really being leaned in tremendously. And so this is a place where the government, we should feel very comfortable to do that. I think when I think about the challenge that with this, and I know we're going to go into challenges later that we need to overcome, is it's oftentimes the way a certain action it needs to be has it in the current state is done in a vertical way. And I don't know, Dan, I wonder like the opportunity, how do we make sure, because I could see where this could be done the wrong way. Like if we don't take it from a horizontal view, right? And I've seen this, and this is why a lot of banks, what they've done is they've reorganized by product so that they could avoid this challenge. And then so it's a matter of, okay, by the product that they're providing, how then they make that more efficient, more seamless. But I don't know. That's something, Dan, I see the way how government is organized. This is going to be something we're going to have to. It's such an incredible opportunity, but how do we make sure that this is being implemented the right way is going to be something that's going to be critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so the last one, I'll dive back in on this one, Lee. So citizen-centric personalization, right? I think I hinted at it up front when we were introducing all five of these, but so powerful to sort of be able to determine what would be relevant and timely for the citizen without them having to, arrive at the acknowledgement that they need some information and what information they need, and then set about trying to find it in probably a mix of different siloed destinations, right? What if we could, understand that based on data and come to them with what they need, right? How can we get there? But before I go too far in, I just wanted to share a shout out to SSA for their retirement calculator, which has been around a little while. And when I think of personalization, that's the first thing I think of. And Lee, you and I chatted about this a bit. I think I mentioned before I spent 20 years inside of government, so I'm reaching that place where retirement is at least an idea at some stage in the future. But I want to acknowledge SSA, and we almost included that as our example here. But I think where we landed is going abroad and looking globally at government services. And we sort of like, we're looking ahead to the next phase, right? And just wanted to mention what's happening in Singapore with the Smart Nation Initiative and its Life SG app. This app detects life milestones, birth, schooling, retirement, unemployment, um, by tapping sort of this integrated set of data around the user, and triggers inform an AI recommendation um, about what services would be relevant, or what benefits should be suggested. And this app now kind of serves as a government front door across 100 different government services in Singapore. So instead of siloed portals that are unique to one agency and one program, citizens can access services through this app, where they have a single personalized dashboard, where services are sort of contextually suggested rather than them having to manually search for them. Um, so I think one obvious issue here is privacy, right? And so, on the path to enabling this, we would certainly need user consent, and we'd have to be very thoughtful about what data we used in this process, and how to collect it, and then how to use it, right? Um, that is certainly on the path, and I think, Lee, you're going to talk about that in just a second further. But the other element of this is it requires um, not just multiple programs in one agency to collaborate and bring data together in an integrated way, but it requires integration across agencies to form this sort of single profile, right? So I think this is a powerful example out there internationally. Um, and it also points to some of the hurdles that we're going to need to take on if we eventually hope to really get here. Okay. So, Lee, anything to add on this?
Yeah, that's great, Dan. Your point about looking across organizations and across agencies, I think is going to be really critical for this. And this is, I think, why under Trump 45, the focus on cross-agency journey maps, that was like an initiative with essentially the realization was, if we're trying to solve a key life moment, right? And then when to do that, oftentimes you have to navigate multiple agencies to do that. And that becomes that's very burdensome. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and maybe or maybe not, it will happen. And so I think that initiative was really critical. It was good. It's good to hear that in this, I mean, the last administration, it was talking about life experiences, and I think in this one, I think we have an opportunity. There's in the action plan, it talks about how OMB is going to convene HISPs around how to utilize AI to improve services, and so the call to action would be is let's leverage some of the great examples and great work that's been done, and let's see how we can operationalize that. How do we take, for instance, that the first cross agency journey map was the journey around a service member leaving the military and going into civilian life, and turns out You guessed it. You got VA involved, DOD involved, Department of Education involved. You have Small Business Administration, Department of Labor. Okay, I'm out of breath. But we get the picture. Is all these agencies, how do we've started to work through some of that, but still have, I think there's a lot of opportunity around it. And we could go on and so forth. The retirement piece, some work started, but there's so much more. I mean, as we know, it's such a key moment, and we have an opportunity to address it. But I love how you're talking about this cross-agency perspective. I think it's going to be critical with being able to solve this the right way.
Yeah, Lee, I'm going to try to speed up a little here because I see we only have about 4 minutes left. But we started to get to this in the context of the last example, but there's certainly some technical uh, elements that will be necessary to bring AI to life at its best. But there's also some organizational elements too. And I did want to just share a book called Competing in the Age of AI. It is a fantastic book. If you guys haven't read it, I recommend it and suggest picking it up. But in the book, one of the examples they speak to is Ant Financial. It's the largest fintech firm in the world. It was a spinoff from Alibaba back in 2014. It IPO'd in 2018. But this financial institution right now serves about 700 million users with a broad base of services. They only employ about 10,000 people to do it. Just by comparison, Bank of America was founded in 1924 and it employs 209,000 people to serve 67 million customers. So, Ant Financial, its business model and its operating model were sort of thought about with digital in mind and as an enabler of AI as part of the journey. So, just to share that. But you know, organizational factors you can see, technical factors you see. We're running out of time, so I think Lee, we should probably go ahead and proceed, and then let you hit one, and then wrap it up.
No, that's great. And yeah, so this is a great framework, and I think this is a key. And Dan, kudos to you on this. It was wonderful collaborating with you on this. But I think this is a great piece of how do we kind of address this. And then, we go into some of the key AI challenges around, we've talked this, I'm not going to belabor the point around accuracy, workforce adoption, scaling, and security. Those are we see these are the four areas that we have to take that is being considered, and it's great to see that that's being discussed. And we see the AI action plan as a great way to really to drive this. But then this is going to be really important for this community from a CX standpoint to be critical in helping to navigate it.
So just to wrap it up, um, first, thanks for having us here today. I know I speak for Lee. It was a privilege to be here with all of you and just speak to the intersection of CX and AI. And I know that there's a like-minded group here who really is committed to the people we serve in government. And just can't thank you enough for this opportunity and for joining us today. Just in quick summary, as more public interaction shifts online, digital is increasingly becoming the front door of government. Citizen expectations for service are influenced by the private sector, mobile first, efficient, responsive, personalized. Agencies across government are already embracing AI use cases across the 5 areas we just discussed to enable 24/7 service for citizens. And then implementing AI effectively is not just a technical issue, but also an organizational one. And emerging ethical and trust issues will be important to be deliberate about and to optimize citizen outcomes. But overall, AI ensures the front door is always open and always responsive and increasingly intelligent. So Lee, any final thoughts you'd like to share?
No, this is great. again, honored to be with you, Dan, of course, and everyone. Appreciate ACT-IAC for your great support as we're working through this, and it's an exciting time. This is going to be the first of many many conversations here, but love that this. And by the way, the Postal Forum, I know they loved hearing about this because I know they're wrestling with this as we speak too. So it's just great timing with the AI action plan that we can share some of these perspectives with you. And I'm willing to stay on for a little longer after. I know we'll stop the recording, but for any questions as well. Thank you so
Yeah, I
much.
can too.